So today we have the pleasure of talking to Ms. Ritah Muyambo, Program Specialist in Civil Society Division Youth and Faith Engagement at UN Women. She spent years focusing on global youth issues, human rights, women's economic empowerment, women's political participation, and ensured diversity and inclusivity through a multitude of initiatives at the United Nations and the World YWCA. Move on to the first question. So could you share how your passion for gender equality and human rights advocacy first began, and what motivates you to continue this work?
So I started having the passion for gender equality when I was very young because of the background that I came from. I come from a very humble background where I grew up without a father, and I saw how my mother worked. I saw how my mother became a feminist at that time when I didn't even know the word feminist. However, when I finished my high school, my uncles came and they told my mom that I should get married. My mom turned to me and said, "Do you want to get married?" I said, "No." They said, "What do you want to do?" I told you I wanted to go back to school. Then she told my uncles and said, "There you've just had her. She wants to go back to school." So from then on, I started working with young women. I started working with women. I started working with sex workers. I went to YWCA in Geneva, worked with in 120 countries with over 3 million women and girls. So it was just a journey that presented itself, and because of the passion, because of my mother, I became passionate around gender equality. And my motivation, I think, why I continue with this work, because I still feel I'm an idealist. I still hope to live in a world where gender equality is no longer a question, but a reality for every woman and girl.
Awesome. What advice would you give to young girls who are very passionate about making a difference, like yourself, but may face barriers or doubts along the way?
Barriers will always be there. Doubts will always be there. But what I would advise you to do is to dream big. If you find that there is no chair at a table where you're supposed to be speaking or you're excluded, bring your own chair. Bring your own thoughts and make sure your voice is heard. So don't just accept status quo. You have to make yourself and open the door for yourself. Move in, bring your chair, your thoughts, your passion into all the discussions.
Through driving development programs in countries all around the world, what strategies have you found most effective in engaging young people in advocacy and activism?
So in the work that I do, I work in what are called intergovernmental processes. And in intergovernmental processes, we're always trying to open spaces for youth voice, agency, leadership. And therefore, we try and ensure that young people, especially girls, are given the space to have discussions with decision makers. So as I was saying before, make sure that you bring your chair along. If there's no space, make sure you make the space for yourself. That is one of the things we've found that works, where we open spaces, but it's up to the agency of yourselves to be able to get into the space. You will face barriers, you will face discrimination, but working in intergovernmental processes where you are affecting change in policies is one of the most important things that you can do.
Awesome. So UN Sustainable Development Goals provide a framework for global action, including gender equality. How can girls in Nepal align their leadership initiatives with specific SDGs to maximize impact and contribute to a broader development goal?
So it depends on the project that you're doing. You know, we've got 17 Sustainable Development Goals. I think those 17 development goals, they range from eradicating poverty, from peace and security, education, gender equality, to sustainable institutions. So you need to look through the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, see which one is aligned to the work that you'd like to do, and then go for it. There are different UN agencies who work on different SDGs. For example, UN Women, we work on SDG 3. So align yourself with UN Women. There are UN Women offices in Nepal. Go to a UN Women office and say, this is my project. I would like to understand how I can get involved. For those who work in education, go to a UNESCO office. For those who work on eradicating poverty, go to a UNDP and say, this is my project. How can I work through this? You also need to look through what is in your country, who else is working, connect with them. There are lots of networks of young people. Connect with those networks. Read a lot. There is so much information on the internet in terms of what other people are doing. So don't just go into a project without looking at the pros and the cons of what may come with your project. You need to understand that so that you don't get frustrated when you find that your project is not working. So I'd encourage you to align your project to the relevant SDG that is one of the 17 SDGs.
Awesome. Could you share some examples of UN Women initiatives or programs that have been particularly impactful for girls? And how can young girls get involved or benefit from these initiatives?
So we work on country level. We also work on regional level. We also work on global level. On country level, we found that there are examples of projects in India where they're called safe cities. So a safe city project is where girls are being trained how to be safe in a city. They also take part in talking through initiatives that they feel they need to have in that country. For example, it may be a community where there is really no toilet. And, young girls go to the toilet just behind a bush. What we have found that works is, I think girls have approached their mothers, their elders, to make sure that every time when they go to the toilet, they are accompanied by somebody who's older. And also they've made sure that every single time there are people who are guarding the way into the bush. So this is just an example of where there is really nothing, but girls have taken an initiative. There are initiatives, for example, in South Africa, I think, where there's a school, but then there's also a road next to the school where there are lots of cars. There was no crossing. There was no one waiting for the girls to cross. Girls approached the school and said they would like to take turns in ensuring that they make sure all other girls are safe when they cross the road. So there are simple initiatives that are like that. However, there are also bigger initiatives where we have seen girls advocate for climate justice in different ways. I think you may know the Fridays for Future, which is an initiative which was started by a young person. And there is a lot that is happening around climate justice for their voice to be heard, different initiatives. They've also started to be involved in certain policy-making initiatives. And that is something that we always amplify at UN Women. If we talk about the global engagement of young people in the projects that have worked, we've got what is called a global adolescent girl town hall that happens every 6 weeks. In that way, we bring girls together, like 100 girls, different girls every single time. They then meet with different stakeholders and they give their recommendations on certain issues. And for example, in March, they came together and they gave recommendations on how to eradicate poverty. So those are some of the things that we work with when we're working with girls.
Going back to climate justice, how do you see the intersection of climate justice and gender equality, and what role can young leaders play in addressing this intersection? Specifically, is there any sustainable initiatives that you've seen in South Africa or anywhere else in the world that girls can implement in their communities?
So girls are disproportionately affected by climate, as you know. They bear the brunt of it in every single way. And this comes in the form of food insecurity, water scarcity, displacements in different ways. And this also leads to child marriages, girls miss school. So justice and climate justice and gender equality are intricately connected in a way that we can't do one without the other. So we would encourage all programs that we've seen that work around gender justice and climate justice and gender equality is where young leaders advocate for policies that promote gender equality and climate justice. We also have seen a lot of young people raise awareness in bringing up their voices to say something needs to be done around climate justice. We've also seen young people also push for gender responsive solutions. And I think I go back to the example of Fridays for Future, where we have seen a lot of girls actually leading the movement on Fridays for Futures. In Uganda, we've got Girls for Climate, who are doing amazing work in terms of just planting trees, who are doing amazing work in different communities in raising awareness around, with their grandmothers. We've also seen where they've started looking at indigenous knowledge on how our grandparents used to preserve food and also preserve the land that they have at the moment. One of the things we are pushing for at the moment as well is for girls and young women to own land, which is something that is really crucial if we are to realize gender equality. We also need to understand that gender equality is not about girls being equal to boys. It's about girls realizing their rights. It's about girls being economically empowered. It's about girls realizing that their responsibilities are on the same level as the responsibilities of boys. So it's very, very important when you go into the area of raising awareness around gender equality and climate justice to be aware of the root causes of gender inequality before you start any of your projects.
So whenever you got into UN Women, what advice do you have for girls who want to pursue a similar career like yourself?
So being an advocate is a very difficult job. You are likely to experience burnout a lot. And therefore, self-care is very, very important. So when we say self-care, of course, we are saying taking care of yourself. However, it's also important to recognize what is called collective care, that you should also have a group of girls that you work with, not working alone, but work with a group of girls for you to be able to also, when you can't do something, a friend can help you or somebody can buffer you in the work that you do. It's also very important to be aware of what you are passionate about. And you need not to compromise on what you are passionate about. It's important for you to also network. So find out who else is doing what you are doing. It's important for you to have a mentor. Find out somebody who's passionate about the same thing that you are doing and have them mentor you. Also, when you get into a meeting, don't just listen. Even if you say one sentence, even if you say two sentences, people will notice you. So make sure when you get into a meeting, you say something. And one of the other things that I think you need to do is, I spoke about networking. You do not need to be called into a meeting every single time. You take the initiative to create a space for other people to come into your space. So I think those are some of the things I would give as advice. But if you want to work with UN Women, as I indicated, find out where the UN Women office is in Nepal. I think that is your first point of connection for you to have a discussion with them. And when you go to them, you are not just going empty-handed. You are saying to them, I've got A, B, C, and D. How do I go about it? Let them be your mentors.
Is there any last advice you have for girls in Nepal?
I think I would go back to saying, dream big. I mean, you lose nothing by dreaming big. Make sure that your voice, your leadership, your agency is something that you prioritize. But at the top of it all, take care of yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being a part of this curriculum to empower girls in Nepal. We hope your advice will create a better future for aspiring business leaders around the world.